Legends ZA is honestly a very odd idea for a game, especially when they don't fully commit to the idea because there's no extracurricular activities besides literally just sitting down and watching. And the nice textures are gone too, both building and Pokemon. If Yakuza was the inspiration for this game, then they didn't really do a good job, and nothing here feels particularly French, but that's just an issue they've been having since Paldea. Is adding a few pieces of dialect to a sentence supposed to be all they can do? Say what you want about Sword and Shield, but they did their homework when they made that game. When I heard the concept of this game, I thought you'd be building the city during the story. For a game that prides itself on its customization, you can't even take selfies as good as the game that came out before it. Work that one out. As always, the game had high ambitions and was rushed out the door. However, I'm not reviewing good intentions. At least the music is better this time around after the poor offering in Scarlet and Violet. The game did give me an early Absol, which I like, and they seem to be doing a lot recently. But one thing I couldn't wrap my head around is how most of the NPCs are just an absolute drag to be around, and they're all mostly unpleasant. Coupled with a story that is very bland and it just kind of happens because you showed up at the wrong place in the wrong time, and just get thrust around by everyone else with no agency over your own actions, and I felt it very difficult to pick up and play. This may just seem like old man yells at cloud, but I felt very little motivation to play outside of the gameplay itself, which doesn't last all that long, because it's just a button mash fest after the initial spectacle of it being a real-time battle. The improved facial animations are weird for a game that still has no voice acting, despite looking like it's literally had the file deleted, so you waste your time on nonsense dialogue that goes on forever and ever that you don't care about most of the time, with bad characters and a lame story. I enjoyed it in bursts when I did play, same with the DLC, but getting me to start playing was the problem in the first place, and the DLC came out shortly before Christmas, and now I have other games I want to play, so it'll take me some time to finish it. I'd heard it was bad, but I got it for free, so I don't mind as much. If I pay for it, then I'd be disappointed because the roguelike nature of it wears off very fast. I'll just do these in alphabetical order with some exceptions, and mostly just the characters that I think are worth talking about in general. Adam and Andi show up in the first 5 minutes, and they literally steal your luggage and then battle you down an alleyway. At least it's a realistic representation of France, but what's worse is that Andi shows up later in the game as a friendly NPC with a side quest and just no. Would you ever make up with your robber? Yeah, okay, Canari is hot or whatever, but she's very toxic, rude, and actually cusses you out when she loses. She doesn't even show up in person to her own events, and then you find out later that it wasn't even her doing the hologram performance, it was her grandfather doing it? Which wouldn't that raise questions from her die-hard fans as to why she was in 2 places at once? She's spoiled, dismissive, and arrogant. Some say she's supposed to represent the parasocial streamer aspect, whereas Iono is more the pop star entertainer celebrity, but all that tells me is that I'd know who I'd rather watch. Corbeau is just insane to me because he's introduced as a loan shark that's ensnared your friend in a scheme with some very very fine print that nobody ever reads. But later on in the game, he worms his way into the story and everyone just gives him a free pass in and out of game just because he gives you smiles and tells you you did a good job. Even I found myself doing it near the end and I just had to tell myself no, that this was insane. I don't care if all he did was make us do some community service for 5 minutes and then let us go. He's still a blight on this town and takes the game in a very weird direction. It's just distracting. He couldn't have been like a generic criminal like in the other Pokemon games or something like that. He's very specifically a loan shark. And they made a point, of course it's by Nintendo, to frame him as a good guy. And the sad part is that he's one of the best characters in the game. Emma is honestly just a sad case. I don't know where people get off saying that ZA doesn't have any returning characters, because it very obviously does. Not many, but some. Myself, I was hoping to see more of the PNG princess, Jacinthe, but alas, it was not meant to be. But with Emma, she's an actual nice character to be around. But what does she do? Stand in one place for the meme photo area, Naruto run, and sit in her office chair for 98% of her screen time. What an absolute waste of a returning character that has so much build up from the game before, with some pretty messed up stuff too. She could have even helped with more of the rogue evolutions in the DLC. Griselle and Grisham are just overly hostile members of what is essentially a death cult, and get defensive of it anytime you question their ideals. Grisham seems to have more of a level head, and I do like that they're teased throughout the game. I knew they'd be important because they have the anime trope of having unique hair, so you know they're going to be important. But it was also red, so I knew it would be flare related in some way. I just didn't see rank A coming. Gwynn is just depressing to be around. Her brother might be a hothead that just barges into things, but his whole story arc in the Royale is looking for her, and all she does is bitch about it. Maybe that's the idea? She's downcast because she uses ghosts? Whatever. She's also a Canari fanatic for some reason and bickers with Naveen about it, I guess. Her brother, Ivor, then, is just bland. His hair is a very good design, and that's where it ends, to be honest. His part in the ZA Royale I just tuned out of because I did not care, and it went on way too long. He pestered you about joining him too much, and he's also murdered Rotoms from the looks of it. José is pretty fun to hang around with though. Jacinthe is the complete opposite of all of this. A total game changer that really livened things up when I started to lose interest. A perfect encapsulation of the fairy type, beautiful and deadly. She has this aura about her that is very outwardly friendly but also quietly intimidating. Also somehow has funny comedic timing for a game with no dialogue, like with her just appearing at dinner or her reaction with Ivor. Her design is also lovely and unique with a luxury ball to boot. Even her mouth looks like a callback to classic anime like Sailor Moon, or even Pokemon itself. She caught my attention with her quick changes of emotion as the camera pans over her before her battle and her kissing her luxury ball before battling as well. Other characters do things like this, but I felt like this was the best execution of it. It's also cool that everyone has their own unique battle theme nowadays, but hers is easily the best. It instantly grabs your attention. She gets a lot of flack for harassing the main character when they're busy with something else, but it also would have taken 2 seconds to tell her that they're busy and will come back later. It's 50-50 honestly, but her training under Jacinthe gives her extra brownie points. If people give Corbeau a pass, then they can give her a pass, because the person she fought against and won stays there willingly, by the way. It's interesting then that Corbeau doesn't actually like her. He even tells the player character to hurry up and win when they battle against her. The interpersonal dynamics between the characters makes them feel more real. However, it's a shame that most of them involve not liking someone else. I will say though that the combination of her hair, shoes and dress all make it look like she walks very stiff, and that it would be quite impractical to use in daily life. Her hair is really huge, more like she's trying to convey that she's elegant and classy instead of actually naturally being that way. Ah well, I just love her, and she completely owns her personality in also every scene that she's in. I would have introduced her in this segment with an edit, but I don't want to get a copyright strike. Maybe another day. Jett is a complete waste of a character. With a very obvious I'm a villain design, I was waiting for the heel turn which never happened. In its place we basically get nothing until some details about her and the rival character, well past the point of anyone caring, are revealed in the post-game. Lebanne, or whatever her name is fine I guess. She has some funny moments and she is a nice person underneath, but I just found her annoying. It's very petty, but I think her face design is just weird. It's like her features are too big for her head or something. The juxtaposition of her being very polite and reserved versus her personality when she's on her own is obvious. But when she does get angry, her eyes and her mouth and everything just look disproportionate. Maybe it's supposed to mimic the dignified nature of dragons, but also their raw power. She'll pester you for a battle, and then lose anyway, but then goes on to heal your Pokemon, and do it anyway when you say no. But that's hardly a her problem, that's a Pokemon problem in general. They claim that the tutorials are going away, but with every new game they seem to keep bringing them back. Lida is a great character, and fun to be around. She caught my attention from the early trailers with her smile that sometimes looks like she's trying to motivate a group that's lost its spark, and other times looks like she's trying to be cheeky. It was a clear indication to me that they were taking the time to actually improve how people look. She felt like she was self-aware of the fact that the group was a bunch of misfits, and she also actually asked the player if they're okay with what they're doing. Naveen does it too, but later on, even if there's never an outright option to say yes that they are being a pain. Lida was funny, a good strategist, and easygoing, but not above telling people when they were acting up or being unhelpful. She has an appealing design too. I enjoyed spending time with her, and she's clearly someone's favourite, being featured prominently in some key artwork. She was also my favourite until Jacinthe was introduced. It's pretty interesting to me that a character that was involved with nearly ending all life is just now the stand-in Pokemon professor, but Mable is here I guess. Thanks to Hideo Kojima for modelling her feet. Naveen is a total buzzkill. Not only did I keep forgetting what his name actually was, all he ever did was complain about everything and then get defensive about an online personality. A complete downcast character that very rarely has anything nice to say about anybody. I honestly thought I'd have more to say, but I really don't. Just that I was surprised when I heard they were actually male because I just didn't think so. Taunie / Urbain are maybe one of the worst. Taunie feels like the canon choice, and while they probably act almost identical, Urbain just feels like he's more annoying. Firstly, he brings you into a situation you have no business being in. You literally just visit the town. Then gets your whole group into trouble with a loan shark because he got it into his head out of nowhere that they wanted to get money to do an ad for a hotel. Thanks for running that by everyone else first, champ. And then acts totally blasé about it when it's brought up after you clean up his mess, and you don't even get a sorry or a thank you. Has very obvious main character syndrome too. Did they not see the camera behind our head? At the end of the game, I feel like them being recognised as the best mega user is just wrong. I know the player character gives up their placement with Floette, and while the game wouldn't work as much if you sat in a chair, something else would obviously have been written, but it also begs the question as to why the best mega user was even important if you can just decline and give it to someone else. Absolutely awful character. As others have said, whenever another NPC says he can't be around, all I think to myself is, good. I'm putting AZ and Lysandre together because they're very clearly the most prominent returning characters. Now, I'm not the biggest expert on X and Y, I'll admit. Out of every Pokemon game besides BDSP, X and Y is the only one I struggled to finish. The region was dull, the friends were useless, and I had no real desire to keep going. However, AZ certainly was one of the more interesting aspects of the lore to me, and I felt like a lot was missing with that. Well, too bad he sits around and does nothing for 90% of the screen time, and then dies. A sad scene, I'll admit, and it shows for the second game in a row that Game Freak aren't afraid to go there, but it felt unearned. There were some moments of quiet reflection, but none of what I felt like we'd get in a further explanation of his lore after finishing X and Y. Team Flare is probably the worst team in the series. It's just a poor man's Team Galactic, which was already quite nihilistic for a game aimed at children. I don't really care about Lysandre, and adding new lore to him after 13 years just feels like who cares anymore. It's like Dragon Ball. The main bulk of the show that anyone cared about ended 20 years ago. Lysandre looking at his ring for half a second isn't this deep character study like others make it out to be either. You can make anyone seem sympathetic after the fact. X and Y were rushed, and this game seems like an attempt at the Pokemon Z we never got, but it feels like a confused and wasted opportunity. This doesn't feel like what a Legends game should be, but it doesn't feel like what a traditional Pokemon Z would either. This just feels like them making a game around a different concept to see how it works for the next game. They always test out features in the game prior before using it in the next one, but this time they're just using Kalos as a backdrop, and not even all of it, just Lumia City. They've done the open world fully now, and now they're trying to make it on a smaller scale, but thankfully it's better than what that boring little town hero was. It's good that Pokemon is getting better writing, but there are other ways to do it without making more than half the cast unpleasant. They've been writing better characters for a while, and Violet had deep characters that were also nice to be around, or had a redemption arc. Maybe they're trying something new in ZA, but I really don't like it. All it's done to people is realise how good we had it with Generation 5. I'm sure some people won't like what I've said, but I welcome discussion to change my mind. This just feels like they failed again to do Kalos any justice. Half of what we see here doesn't feel like it would have been created in the think tank that they had in 2013, and a lot of the new megas just seem very poor, and them just coming up with stuff just to fill a quota. No Flygon but Scovillain? Seriously? I was going to bring some shinies over, but knowing that they'll be trapped in a game with no content, I'll pass. The fact they skipped more than half of the ranking system just to have it be like the old 8 gym leader badges was ridiculous as well. And even with all this game had to go on, we still don't know anything more about the power plant.